You are listening to Practical and Woo by Mindset and Manifest. My name is Eden, and I invite you to embark on a journey with me to explore the practical and spiritual edges of the unknown for the purpose of allowing you to embody and empower yourself uniquely as you are and to intentionally create and live a life of freedom and fulfillment. Each week, I am going to discuss topics such as energetics, reality creation, manifestation, astrology, tarot, and more to help empower you to live beyond perceived limitations and to practically design your life so it feels like absolute magic every step of the way. Let's dive in. Well, hello, brilliant soul. I was driving in my car the other day, ruminating on an unfavorable experience I had just had, when a thought dropped in like lightning. The kind of thought that somehow breathes life into you as if it's coming from somewhere beyond your own faculties. It felt like wisdom wrapped in the costume of a blessing, and it said, "May you know the pleasure of having people show up for you because they want to and not because they are expected to." Now, the beauty of this blessing for me is that I have come to know the pleasure and distinction of this experience, to understand what it feels like to be met with a pure gesture in comparison to a gesture that comes from fear, expectancy, or a sense of obligation. There's not much else that feels like being given a gift, a smile, a gesture, an experience with the purity of love from someone's heart. In thinking about the experience in which I was ruminating on, the impact of the treatment that I had and have many times before received in my life, I felt a deep sadness for those I sense have only known gestures and gifts given from fear. At first, I didn't realize this concept would form an episode at all, and it's been niggling in my mind the last few weeks, and so here we are. It's my wish for you that you are to give yourself permission to receive the purest offering of love in your life, even with how tenacious you are and how much of a go-getter you are. There is no amount of demanding or controlling that can yield the experience we're unpacking here today. The deepest pleasure in life does not come from getting what you demanded, negotiated, or extracted from people, places, or things. And the more we attempt to secure love or validation or loyalty through the rigid demands of our mind, the further we move away from the truest essence of what we most crave. There is a difference between someone showing up because they have to and someone showing up because they want to. Behaviorally, the actions may seem the same. A phone call still happens and a visit can still take place. A favor is still performed. But from an energetic and psychological standpoint, these things are worlds apart. One carries the weight of obligation, the other carries the lightness of desire. Where one version of events is compliance, the other is devotion. Many of us were taught, subtly or explicitly, that if we want something, we must secure it by any means necessary. We were also taught that we must protect ourselves from disappointment by constructing agreements that are so airtight nothing can slip through. And coming from a lawyer turned mindset consultant with a proficiency in legal drafting, I know a thing or two about creating an airtight agreement. But even in that world, one of the things that I was always made sure I was aware of was that I was balancing the protection and contract proficiency with the sanctity of the relationship itself. We must notice the fear beneath the demand because casting rigid expectations is rarely ever about logistics, but instead, it's actually a form of anxiety relief. When we cling, grip, or maintain control, we are soothing our immediate need to hold on to what we're wanting, and we're demanding its existence in our presence. But when you do this, there is no possible way to truly enjoy it because you'll start to wonder if it's only staying because you're gripping so tightly. Have you ever gotten your way with something only to feel like it's a consolation prize? It's like demanding a compliment and then wondering if what was said is even true. Life experiences, especially those with others, taste infinitely more sweeter when they meet you with surprise, when they are given as a truest expression of someone's love for you. When you don't allow this, you may always feel in the air this suspicion that gestures aren't voluntary or pure. And this ultimately means that you have two choices in the matter. Either you must create an unsustainable house of cards to provoke what you're wanting to come and stay, or you surrender and allow yourself to notice the gestures of love that exist all around you, and you allow them to accumulate, compound, and grow in their own desire and time. There's a myth that illustrates this dynamic with startling clarity, and it's one that we have collectively misunderstood for centuries. It's the myth of King Midas, which is often told as a warning about greed, but I believe it's more deeply a story about control. Midas was granted a wish that everything he touched would turn to gold. On the surface, this seemed like a gift of abundance and unrelenting power. But what he truly desired in the first place was not gold, but certainty. He wanted to ensure that nothing he valued could be lost. If everything became gold, then everything became secure. It could not decay, it could not betray him, it could not leave. When King Midas's daughter turned to gold in his arms, it was apparent that she was no longer alive, no longer able to move toward him, no longer an agent of her own sovereignty. The value of the gifts she could give to him were lost in her becoming commodified, even though the gold was technically valuable. Control, when taken to an extreme, may produce compliance, but it kills aliveness. When we demand that people show up because they are supposed to, we are, in a subtle way, turning them into gold. We are removing their choice in order to secure our comfort. And while we may technically receive the behavior we wanted, we lose the vitality of the desire. We lose the magic of someone arriving because their heart moved them there. The irony is that in our attempt to eliminate uncertainty, we eliminate intimacy. Intimacy requires freedom and the ability for someone to choose you freely. This is where releasing the grip becomes less about passivity and more about courage. It's the courage to allow a space for choice. It's the courage to stop overstructuring love. It's the courage to let someone else's desire be their own. And the greatest paradox of this contemplation is that when you release rigid expectation, you become a magnet to all that you desire and more. When you release your grip on reality, you no longer relate to your life from the identity of someone who must secure outcomes, but instead as someone who trusts their inherent worth, and then reality mirrors that in kind. Having trust doesn't mean abandoning your standards. It means your standards instead arise from self-respect rather than from a place of fear. There's a difference between saying, you must do this or else, and saying, I'm available for relationships that feel voluntary and alive. One is a demand, the other is a boundary rooted in identity. The pleasure of being chosen cannot be replicated by obligation or negotiated into existence. It must arise organically. Many of us grip because we believe that if we let go, nothing will happen. But that belief is an assumption. And if you assume that without pressure, people will not care, then you will unconsciously attract those very dynamics into your life. There's a kind of love that feels like pushing a boulder up a hill, where you're strategizing and negotiating, constantly reminding and insisting. And every now and again, you get what you asked for, but it never feels as fulfilling as you'd want it to. Instead, it feels earned in a way that's exhausting. But there's also another kind of love that moves towards you because it truly wants to. In the story of Midas, the king eventually begs for the curse to be lifted because he realizes that life without voluntary movement is useless, valueless, and lifeless. He learns that infinite riches without relationship is hollow, And when the golden spell is washed away, what returns is somehow even more valuable than what he had when he only had gold. To release rigid expectation is to wash rigidity and expectancy away from your perceptions and to allow the people in your life to remain human with agency, with choice, and with their own desire. And it's to trust that if you are aligned with your own worth, the right people will show up because they want to, not because they have to. The ultimate empowerment here feels subtle, but is seismic. Stop trying to extract proof of love and allow love to reveal itself to you naturally. May you know the pleasure of being met without coercion. May you experience the kind of love that moves towards you freely. May you release the reflex to grip onto and make demands for your life, and instead discover the power of finding your own alignment. Until next time.